The stars hung cold and distant in the black void of space. Battle Group Cerberus moved through the darkness like a pack of wolves, silent and deadly. 3 massive dreadnoughts led the formation, their hulls scarred from countless battles. 12 cruisers flanked them on all sides, and fighter carriers held position at the rear. This was humanity's answer to the question nobody wanted to ask: what happens when Earth goes to war? Admiral Helena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Titan's Hammer, watching the endless stars through the viewing port. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her dark eyes missed nothing. She had served in Earth's military for 32 years. She had seen things that would break most people. Wars that lasted decades, battles where millions died. But she was still here, still standing, still fighting. The other species in the galaxy called humans crazy. They called them reckless. They called them dangerous. They were right on all counts. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 15 years ago, and already they had a reputation. While other species spent weeks planning military operations, humans acted in hours. While others calculated acceptable losses, humans threw themselves into danger to save a single life. It made no sense to the logical minds of the galaxy, but it made perfect sense to anyone who understood human history. Commander James Torres approached the Admiral, his boots clicking on the metal deck. He was younger than Vasquez by 20 years, but his eyes held the same hard edge. Admiral, we're holding position at Sector 77 Alpha. All systems normal. The crew is getting restless, though. 6 months of patrol duty with no action. Vasquez smiled slightly. Boredom is a luxury in our line of work, Commander. Enjoy it while it lasts. As if the universe heard her words and decided to laugh, an alarm cut through the bridge. The sharp electronic wail made every officer snap to attention. Lieutenant Park at Communications spun in her chair, her fingers flying over the controls. Admiral! Distress beacon, coming in hot from the Kepler Refuge system. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about Kepler Refuge. It was home to the Arcsani, a species of peaceful philosophers who had been among the first to welcome humanity into galactic society. While others had looked at humans with fear and suspicion, the Arcsani had offered friendship. They had no military, no weapons, no defenses. They believed in the sanctity of life and the power of words. In a galaxy full of predators, they somehow survived through the protection of galactic law. Put it through, Vasquez ordered. Static filled the bridge, then a voice. It was broken, desperate, speaking in the clicking language of the Arcsani through a translator. Under attack. Unknown hostiles. Weapons dissolving our buildings. Thousands dead. Please, anyone, help us. The message cut off. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. Torres pulled up the tactical display. His face went pale. Admiral, we're 48 hours away at maximum burn. Standard Galactic Council protocol requires a 72-hour deliberation period before any military response. By the time they approve action, they'll be dead, Vasquez finished. She looked at the star map, her jaw tight. 48 hours. 2 full days while civilians died, while children screamed, while a peaceful species was slaughtered, because they had trusted in galactic law to protect them. The other officers on the bridge watched her. They knew that look. They had seen it before, right before the Admiral made decisions that would either save lives or end careers, sometimes both. Commander Torres, what's the status of the fleet? Vasquez asked, her voice calm. Torres blinked. Ma'am, all ships are ready for... I didn't ask if they were ready. I asked their status. Can we execute an emergency jump sequence? The bridge went dead quiet. Emergency jump sequences were considered suicide by most species. The gravitational forces involved could tear ships apart. Crew members could be killed by the sudden acceleration. Systems could fail catastrophically. The risk was enormous. Technically, yes, Admiral, Torres said slowly. But the regulations clearly state... I didn't ask about regulations either, Commander. Vasquez turned to face her officers. How many of you know what the Arcsani did for us when we first joined the Council? Lieutenant Park raised her hand slowly. They voted to accept our application. Even when others said we were too violent, too unpredictable. They said every species deserves a chance. That's right, Vasquez nodded. They took a chance on us. Now they're dying and the Council wants us to wait and debate and follow proper procedures. Well, I'm done following procedures while good people die. She turned to the helm officer. Navigation, plot an emergency jump to Kepler Refuge. Maximum compression on the jump field. I want us there in 6 hours, not 48. Admiral. Torres stepped forward. This is against direct council orders. If we do this, they could court-martial you. They could disband the entire battle group. Vasquez looked at him steadily. The council can debate while we act, Commander. We don't leave anyone to die on our watch. That's not who we are. That's not what humanity stands for. She paused. I'm not ordering anyone to come with me. This is volunteer only. Anyone who wants to transfer their command codes to a support vessel and stay behind, do it now. Oh shame, no questions asked. Nobody moved. Not a single officer stepped away from their station. Torres smiled slowly. Well, Admiral, looks like you're stuck with us. Again. Damn fools, all of you, Vasquez said, but there was pride in her voice. She activated the fleet-wide communication channel. All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez. We have a situation. The Arxani colony at Kepler Refuge is under attack. Civilians are dying. The Council wants us to wait for authorization. We're not waiting. We're executing an emergency jump sequence in 10 minutes. I know what I'm asking. I know the risks. But I also know who we are. We're Battle Group Cerberus, and we're humanity's deadliest fleet. We don't abandon our friends, not ever. Prepare for immediate departure. Across the fleet, crews scrambled to their stations. Engineers reinforced structural supports. Medical teams prepared for casualties from the violent jump. Marines checked their weapons, knowing they might be fighting as soon as they arrived. Fighter pilots strapped into their cockpits. Every human in the battle group knew what was about to happen, and every single one of them was ready. On the bridge of Titan's Hammer, Vasquez watched the countdown timer. 10 minutes became 5. 5 became 1. The jump drives built up power, creating a humming vibration that shook the entire ship. Reality itself seemed to bend around the fleet, space-time warping under the massive energies being generated. All ships report ready, Admiral, Torres announced. Vasquez took a deep breath. Then let's go save some lives. Jump. The universe twisted. The stars stretched into lines of light, and Battle Group Cerberus vanished in a cascade of blue-white radiation, tearing through space at speeds that should have been impossible. Behind them, automated beacons began transmitting messages to the Galactic Council, informing them of the unauthorized military action. But the humans were already gone, racing toward a battle they might not survive to save people they barely knew, because it was the right thing to do, and that, more than their weapons or their tactics or their ships, was what made humanity truly terrifying to the rest of the galaxy. They cared, and they would go through hell itself for those they cared about. The emergency jump felt like being crushed and stretched at the same time. Inside Battle Group Cerberus, crew members gripped their stations as reality bent around them. Some screamed. Others prayed. A few laughed like maniacs, high on adrenaline and the insanity of what they were doing. The ships groaned and shuddered, metal screaming under forces that no vessel was designed to handle. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The universe snapped back into focus. Alarms wailed across every ship as systems reported damage. But they were alive. And more importantly, they were here. Status report. Admiral Vasquez barked, pulling herself upright. Blood trickled from her nose, a common side effect of emergency jumps. Around the bridge, officers checked their stations with shaking hands. We made it, Admiral, Lieutenant Park reported, her voice amazed. 6 hours and 12 minutes. We just crossed 48 hours of space in 6 hours. That's impossible. Tell that to the other species, Commander Torres muttered, wiping blood from his own face. We just rewrote their physics textbooks. Damage reports coming in, another officer called out. Hull breaches on Deck 7 and 12 of the Ragnarok. The Vengeance lost its secondary power core. Fighter Bay 3 is offline. Medical teams are treating jump sickness across the fleet. But we're operational, Admiral. Battered but operational. Vasquez nodded. This was the human way. Hit fast, hit hard, and deal with the consequences later. Tactical, what do we have? The main display lit up with the Kepler Refuge system. The planet hung in the center, beautiful and blue, but around it, like vultures circling a dying animal, 17 hostile vessels held orbit. They were unlike any design in Council records. Angular, covered in what looked like organic growths, with weapons that pulsed with sickly green light. 17 enemy contacts. Admiral, the tactical officer reported. They matched the profile of the Kresh Dominion. Heavy cruisers and destroyers. They're bombarding population centers on the surface. He paused, his voice going hard. Sir, I'm reading massive civilian casualties. They're not even trying for military targets. They're just killing everyone. The Arxani don't have military targets, Torres said quietly. They never built an army. They trusted in the law. Vasquez felt rage boil in her chest, cold and controlled. This was what separated humans from the monsters. Humans knew how to kill, they were very good at it, but they also knew when to stop. They understood the difference between a soldier and a civilian, between a battle and a massacre. These Kresh clearly didn't care about that difference. Identification confirmed, Admiral, Park announced. Those are definitely Kresh Dominion warships. They're in violation of the peace accords. This is an illegal invasion. They're about to discover what happens when you break human-protected space, Vasquez said. All ships, battle stations. This is not a drill. We are now in a combat situation. Rules of engagement are weapons-free on all hostile targets. Our priority is stopping that bombardment and protecting civilian lives. Across the fleet, the machines of war came alive. Weapon systems powered up. Targeting computers locked onto enemy ships. Marines suited up in powered armor. Every human in Battle Group Cerberus had trained for this moment. They had run simulations 1,000 times. But this was real. Real people were dying down on that planet. Real enemies were about to learn why humanity was feared. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Kresh flagship, Park reported. Put it through. The voice that came through was cold, mechanical, translated by the computer from a language of clicks and hisses. Human vessels. You are interfering in Kresh territorial acquisition. This world now belongs to the Dominion. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Vasquez laughed, a sound without humor. Territorial acquisition? Is that what they're calling genocide these days? She opened a channel, broadcasting on all frequencies, not just to the Kresh but to the Arxani below, and to the Galactic Council that would receive this message in hours. This is Admiral Helena Vasquez of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet, Battle Group Cerberus. To the Kresh Dominion, you have violated Council law. You have attacked a peaceful species. You have murdered civilians. You have 30 seconds to cease fire and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. There was silence for a moment. Then the Kresh responded with laughter. Foolish humans. You are 13 ships. We are 17. Your technology is inferior. Your tactics are known to us. You cannot win. 29 seconds. Vasquez said calmly. You dare. 28 seconds. The Kresh commander's voice turned sharp. You will die here, human. Your species' arrogance will. Time's up. The Kresh flagship opened fire. Green energy beams lanced through space, striking the shields of Titan's hammer. The impact shook the ship, but the shields held. It was a declaration of war. It was also the last mistake the Kresh would ever make. All ships, Vasquez ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. Close to knife-fighting range. Maximum acceleration. Launch all fighters. Prepare boarding parties. Show them what happens when you make humanity angry. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. Battle Group Cerberus didn't engage in the traditional long-range bombardment that other species favored. They accelerated directly toward the enemy at speeds that should have torn their ships apart. The human vessels weren't just faster. They were piloted by a species that had evolved on a high-gravity world, whose bodies could withstand forces that would kill most aliens. Railguns opened up, firing hypersonic tungsten rods that punched through Kresh shields like paper. Missile salvos filled space, so many that the targeting computers couldn't track them all. Human fighters screamed past the capital ships, their pilots pulling maneuvers that would cause most species to black out. The fighters ignored defensive fire, ignoring their own safety, focused only on delivering their payloads. Targets acquired, the weapons officer shouted. Firing! Titan's hammer unleashed its full arsenal. The main guns, massive cannons that ran the entire length of the ship, fired in sequence. Each shot carried enough kinetic energy to split a moon. The Kresh ships, designed to fight the careful, measured battles of other species, weren't prepared for this level of violence. A Kresh cruiser exploded, torn apart by a direct hit from the dreadnought Ragnarok. Another lost power as fighters swarmed it, targeting specific systems with surgical precision. But the Kresh fought back. Their organic weapons lashed out, hitting the destroyer Defiant and melting through its armor. The ship listed venting atmosphere. Defiant is disabled, Torres reported. They're evacuating crew. Cover them, Vasquez ordered. Don't let those bastards finish them off. 3 Kresh ships turned toward the wounded Defiant, moving in for the kill. But they had made a mistake. They had turned their backs on the dreadnought Indomitable. Captain Sarah Chen commanded Indomitable with a quiet competence that made her crew worship her. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but she had a will of iron. And right now she saw her chance. "All power to forward guns," she ordered. "Target those 3 cruisers. Maximum yield." "Captain, if we fire at that power level, we'll burn out the capacitors," her weapons officer warned. "Then we better make it count. Fire!" Indomitable lived up to its name. The forward batteries fed every ounce of power the ship could generate, fired simultaneously. 3 spears of light crossed space in an instant, striking the Kresh cruisers. One exploded outright. The second broke in half. The third, its shield overloaded, went dark and began to drift. But the recoil and power drain cost Indomitable dearly. Systems failed across the ship. The lights went out, replaced by emergency red glow. The shields collapsed. And 3 more Kresh ships, seeing the opportunity, concentrated all their fire on the now vulnerable dreadnought. The bridge of Titan's hammer watched in horror as Indomitable was bracketed by enemy fire. The organic weapons of the Kresh ate through armor like acid. Explosions blossomed along the hull. The massive ship shuddered under the assault. "Indomitable is critical," Torres shouted. "Multiple hull breaches. They're losing atmosphere on all decks." Vasquez gripped her chair. "Order them to withdraw. Get them out of there." But Captain Chen had other ideas. Her voice came through the calm despite the chaos around her. "Negative, Admiral. We're not running. Helm full burn. Set course directly for the Kresh flagship." "Captain, what are you—" Vasquez began. "Doing what needs to be done, ma'am. All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship. I repeat, abandon ship. You have 2 minutes to reach the escape pods." And then Admiral Vasquez understood. Captain Chen wasn't retreating. She was turning her dying ship into a weapon. 2 million tons of human dreadnought, accelerating at full burn, aimed directly at the enemy command vessel. The Kresh realized too late what was happening. Their flagship tried to maneuver, tried to bring weapons to bear, but Indomitable was already too close, moving too fast. Escape pods shot out from the dying dreadnought, carrying the crew to safety. All except one. Captain Sarah Chen stood alone on the bridge, her hands steady on the controls, guiding her ship on its final mission. "Indomitable to Battle Group Cerberus," she said, her voice clear. "It has been an honor serving with you all. Give them hell for me. Chen out." The dreadnought Indomitable, pride of the Terran fleet, crashed into the Kresh flagship at relativistic speeds. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star. When the light faded, both ships were gone, transformed into a cloud of superheated debris. The Kresh formation collapsed. Their command ship was destroyed. Their commander was dead, and the humans, rather than pausing to mourn their loss, pressed the attack even harder. Because that was the human way. You hurt them and they came back twice as hard. You killed one of them and they made you pay in blood. The Kresh had started this fight. The humans were going to finish it. The destruction of the Kresh flagship changed everything. The enemy formation, once coordinated and deadly, fell into chaos. Ships broke formation, commanders screaming contradictory orders at each other. Without their leader, the Kresh Dominion fleet revealed its weakness. They were warriors who followed orders, not soldiers who could think for themselves. Battle Group Cerberus showed no mercy. Admiral Vasquez watched from her command chair as the human fleet tore through the Kresh like wolves among sheep. Her face was stone, but inside her heart ached for Captain Chen and the crew of Indomitable. Later there would be time to mourn. Later there would be ceremonies and medals and tears. But right now there were still enemies to fight and civilians to save. "Status of remaining Kresh vessels?" she asked, her voice steady. Commander Torres checked the tactical display. 8 ships remaining, Admiral. 3 are trying to withdraw. 5 are still engaging. Their weapons are less effective than we thought. Most of their firepower was in that flagship. "Don't underestimate them," Vasquez warned. "Wounded animals are the most dangerous. Maintain pressure. I want every ship that doesn't surrender disabled or destroyed." The battle continued to rage. The cruiser Vengeance, despite losing its secondary power core during the emergency jump, fought alongside the destroyer pack, coordinating attacks that left Kresh ships spinning helplessly in space. Human fighters, having lost 40% of their number, pressed attacks with even more ferocity. Every pilot knew about Captain Chen. Every pilot wanted revenge. A Kresh destroyer, attempting to flee, fired its engines at maximum burn. It almost escaped. Almost. But a flight of human bombers, their weapons depleted, did the unthinkable. They rammed it. 5 fighters, 5 pilots deliberately crashed into the fleeing enemy ship. The destroyer's engines exploded, leaving it dead in space. "My God," Torres whispered. "They didn't have to." "Yes, they did," Vasquez said quietly. "In their minds, they did. That ship was getting away. It might have brought reinforcements. It might have attacked another peaceful world. They made a choice." She closed her eyes briefly. "Log their names. They'll be remembered as heroes." The battle, which had seemed like it might drag on for hours, was over in 47 minutes. Of the 17 Kresh ships, 8 were destroyed, 7 were disabled and surrendering, and 2 had managed to escape into hyperspace. Battle Group Cerberus had won, but the cost had been terrible. "Casualty reports, Commander," Vasquez ordered, dreading the answer. Torres read from his screen, his voice heavy. "Indomitable lost with all hands except the evacuated crew. 372 dead. 5 fighter squadrons lost, another 120 pilots. The Defiant is salvageable but will need months of repair. Across the fleet we have over 300 wounded." He paused. "Total dead 1,247. The bridge fell silent. Over 1,000 dead. Over 1,000 families who would receive messages telling them their loved ones weren't coming home. Over 1,000 empty chairs at dinner tables across Earth and its colonies. But the mission wasn't over. Orbital bombardment has ceased," Lieutenant Park reported. "The Arxani are broadcasting thanks on all frequencies. They're calling us saviors." Vasquez shook her head slowly. "We're not saviors. We're just soldiers doing our job." "Tactical, what's the situation on the ground?" "Kresh ground forces are cut off from their fleet," the tactical officer replied. "Approximately 5,000 enemy troops scattered across 3 continents. They've fortified several positions. The Arxani casualties are extensive. We're reading hundreds of thousands dead or wounded, hundreds of thousands." The number was staggering. The Arxani population was only about 50 million total. This attack had killed or wounded nearly 2% of their entire species in a single day. If the same ratio had hit Earth with its 18 billion people, that would have been 360 million casualties. "Launch the Marines," Vasquez ordered. "Tell Colonel Ramirez that the Kresh ground forces are to be given one chance to surrender. If they refuse, show them what human infantry can do." Across the fleet, massive dropships detached from the carriers. Each one carried a full company of Marines, 200 soldiers in powered armor, armed with weapons that made the Kresh tools look primitive. The ships entered the atmosphere like meteors, their hulls glowing red from friction. The Kresh forces on the ground looked up and saw death descending from the sky. Colonel Maria Ramirez commanded the 3rd Marine Division from the lead dropship. She was a veteran of the Proxima Wars, where humans had fought their first major conflict against alien forces. She knew what it took to win against non-human enemies. She also knew that mercy was a strength, not a weakness. As her ship touched down outside a Kresh fortification, she opened a broadcast on all frequencies. "Kresh forces, this is Colonel Ramirez of the Terran Marine Corps. Your fleet is destroyed. You are cut off. You have no support, no resupply, no hope of extraction. I am authorized to accept your surrender. Lay down your weapons and you will be treated according to Galactic Convention. You have 5 minutes to decide." The response came quickly. The Kresh commander's voice was filled with contempt. "Humans. Weak species. Soft hearts. You offer mercy because you fear to fight. We will never surrender to inferior beings." Ramirez sighed. "Wrong answer." She switched to her command channel. "All units, rules of engagement are weapons-free. The Kresh want to fight. Let's give them one they'll remember." What happened next was a masterclass in human warfare. The Marines didn't charge blindly. They didn't rely on superior firepower. They used tactics developed over thousands of years of human conflict, adapted for alien enemies. Snipers took out Kresh commanders from impossible distances. Drones mapped every defensive position. Combat engineers undermined fortifications. And when the Marines finally attacked, they did so with a coordination that left the Kresh reeling. The Kresh were strong fighters, evolved on a high-gravity world like humanity. But they fought as individuals, each warrior seeking personal glory. Humans fought as a unit, each soldier covering their battle buddy, working together like parts of a single organism. Where the Kresh saw honor in one-on-one combat, humans saw efficiency in squad tactics. The first Kresh stronghold fell in 20 minutes. The second took 30, because the Kresh had learned and adapted. But humans adapted faster. By the time the Marines hit the third fortification, they had figured out every Kresh tactic. Every weakness, every pattern. The Kresh commander, watching his forces fall one by one, finally understood the truth. Humans weren't soft. Their mercy wasn't weakness. It was confidence. They offered surrender because they knew they would win either way. They preferred to take prisoners, but they were perfectly capable of taking corpses instead. "We surrender," the Kresh commander broadcast. "We lay down our weapons, mercy!" Ramirez ordered an immediate ceasefire. Within minutes, Kresh soldiers were emerging from their positions, arms raised, weapons discarded. The Marines secured them efficiently, treating the wounded, separating the officers, documenting everything. This was important. These prisoners would testify before the Galactic Council about what happened here. Back in orbit, Admiral Vasquez received the report. "All Kresh ground forces have surrendered, Admiral. The planet is secure. The Arxani are safe." Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. "Good, very good. Begin recovery operations. I want every escape pod picked up, every wounded soldier treated, every—" "Admiral!" Lieutenant Park's voice was sharp with alarm. "Long-range sensors have detected a massive hyperspace signature. Multiple contacts, over 200 ships bearing directly for this system. They'll be here in 3 hours." The smile vanished from Vasquez's face. "Identification?" "They're Kresh, Admiral. It's an armada. They're coming for revenge." Commander Torres pulled up the sensor data, his face going pale. "Admiral, we can't fight that many ships. Not in our current condition. We need to evacuate the Arxani and fall back to friendly space." Vasquez looked at the tactical display. 200 Kresh ships. Her own battle group was battered, low on ammunition, missing over a third of its fighting strength. By every logical calculation, they should run. They had done their job. They had saved the Arxani. Nobody could fault them for retreating in the face of overwhelming odds. But then she thought about Captain Chen, who had given her life to take out the enemy flagship. She thought about the fighter pilots who had rammed that fleeing destroyer. She thought about the Marines who had just fought to secure this world. And she thought about the Arxani below, who had trusted humanity to protect them. "No," she said firmly. "We don't run." "Admiral, be reasonable." "I'm being reasonable, Commander. We came here to protect these people. If we leave now, the Kresh will finish what they started. They'll kill every Arxani on this planet. They'll burn their cities. They'll erase their culture. And they'll do it because we taught them they could." She turned to face Torres. "We drew a line the moment we entered this system. We said no further. We don't get to erase that line just because the cost got higher." Torres stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled. "You know what? You're absolutely right. Besides, it's just 200 ships. What's the worst that could happen? We could all die," Vasquez said honestly. "Well, yes, there is that," Torres admitted. "But think of the headlines. Battle Group Cerberus dies defending innocent aliens. We'll be famous. I'd rather be alive." "Can't always get what we want, Admiral." Torres turned to the crew. "You heard the Admiral. We're staying. We're fighting. Start working on the impossible, because that's our specialty. Engineering teams, I want every damaged system operational. Weapons crews, get creative with ammunition. Science teams, start thinking of ways to even the odds. And somebody get me a detailed scan of this system. If we're going to win this, we need every advantage we can find." The crew of Titan's Hammer, instead of despairing, seemed energized. This was what humans did best. When faced with impossible odds, they didn't give up. They got creative. They adapted. They found a way. Admiral Vasquez opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is the Admiral. I won't lie to you. We have a Kresh armada inbound. 200 ships. They outnumber us. They outgun us. By every tactical calculation, we should retreat." She paused. "But we're not going to. We're going to stay right here and show these bastards what happens when they threaten people under our protection. We're going to fight smarter. We're going to use every dirty trick humanity ever invented. And we're going to win. Because that's what we do. That's who we are. We're Battle Group Cerberus. We're Earth's deadliest fleet. And we don't back down. Ever." Across the fleet, crews cheered. Engineers began cannibalizing damaged ships for parts. Weapons officers started manufacturing improvised explosives from whatever materials they could find. Pilots volunteered for suicide missions. Everyone contributed ideas, from the greenest recruit to the most experienced officer. And on the surface of Kepler Refuge, the Arxani watched the humans prepare for battle. They saw the battered fleet, the damaged ships, the impossible odds. They knew what the humans were about to do. They were going to fight. They were going to die. All to protect a species they barely knew. The Arxani Elder, leader of the Planetary Council, broadcast a message to the fleet. Humans of Battle Group Cerberus, we see what you intend. We cannot ask you to sacrifice yourselves for us. Please evacuate our people and flee. We would rather die than see you fall. Admiral Vasquez responded personally. With respect, Elder, that's not your choice to make. We came here to help. We're not leaving until the job is done. Besides, she added with a grim smile, you're not getting rid of us that easily. We're stubborn that way. The Elder was silent for a moment. Then in a voice filled with emotion he said, Then we stand with you. The Arxani may not have weapons, but we have knowledge. We have resources. We have hands willing to work. Tell us how we can help and we will. And just like that, the humans weren't alone anymore. The Arxani, inspired by humanity's refusal to abandon them, refused to abandon the humans. Ore haulers from the mining facilities volunteered to serve as decoys. Scientists offered knowledge of the system's asteroid fields. Even civilians joined in, preparing field hospitals, organizing supply chains, doing whatever they could. The Kresh were coming. 200 ships against 12 battered human vessels and a planet of pacifist philosophers. The odds were ridiculous. The situation was hopeless. But humanity had faced hopeless situations before, and they always found a way to win. 3 hours until the Armada arrived. 3 hours to prepare the impossible. 3 hours to show the galaxy what happened when you pushed humanity too far. 3 hours to prepare for the impossible. Admiral Vasquez stood in the war room, surrounded by her senior officers, staring at a holographic display of the Kepler Refuge system. 12 damaged ships against 200. The numbers didn't lie. In a straight fight, they would lose. Badly. So we don't fight straight, Vasquez said, breaking the silence. We cheat. We use every advantage. We think like humans, not like the military academies teach. Torres, start us off. Commander Torres stepped forward, pointing at the asteroid belt between the third and fourth planets. The Arxani mining operations left hundreds of hollowed-out asteroids. We could rig them with explosives, position them along the enemy's approach vector, remote detonation on our signal. Good start, Vasquez nodded. But 200 ships can navigate around debris. We need more. Lieutenant Park spoke up. Admiral, what if we don't just blow up the asteroids? What if we turn them into weapons? The Arxani have mining charges, industrial lasers, even some old rail drivers for moving ore. We could create an entire minefield of improvised weapons. I like it, Vasquez said. Get engineering teams on it. What else? A voice came from the back of the room. It was Chief Engineer Rodriguez, his uniform stained with grease and blood from the emergency repairs. Admiral, we can't match their firepower ship to ship. But we don't need to. We need to break their formation, cause chaos. What if we use the Defiant? Everyone turned to look at him. The Defiant was crippled, barely spaceworthy. It would take weeks to fully repair. Explain, Vasquez ordered. Rodriguez moved to the display, his hands shaping the idea. The Defiant can't fight, but her power core is intact. We pack her with every explosive we have, ammunition, reactor cores from damaged fighters, even the fuel cells. Then we set her on autopilot, straight into the center of their formation. When she blows, it'll be like a nuclear weapon going off. Commander Torres frowned. That's sacrificing an entire dreadnought. That's using a crippled ship to take out dozens of enemy vessels, Rodriguez corrected. The Defiant is already dead, Commander. Let's make her death count. Vasquez considered it. It was brutal. It was wasteful. It was also exactly the kind of asymmetric warfare that humans excelled at. Do it, but make sure the crew knows they're heroes. Their ship will save thousands of Arxani lives. The planning continued. Each officer contributed ideas, building on each other's suggestions. Mines seeded throughout the approach vectors. Fighter drones programmed with kamikaze protocols. Even the Arxani contributed, revealing hidden system defenses they had never mentioned. Old satellites with powerful lasers, designed for deflecting asteroids that could be repurposed as weapons. What about reinforcements? Torres asked. Did we get any response from the Council? Park shook her head. The Council is still in session debating our unauthorized intervention. They've issued several strongly worded communications demanding we withdraw. Strongly worded communications, Vasquez repeated with disgust. The galaxy is burning and they're writing sternly worded letters. She looked at the display again, at the countdown timer showing 2 hours and 43 minutes. We're on our own then, fine, we've always been on our own. Not entirely alone, Admiral, Park said, a strange smile on her face. I've been monitoring subspace chatter. There are observers, ships from other species watching from the edge of the system. They're not engaging, but they're watching. Which species? Mostly our neighbors. The Delcari, whose colony we defended at Proxima. The Vrel, whose trade convoys we escort. Even a few Yentari ships. They've never liked the Kresh since the border wars. Torres understood immediately. They're waiting to see what we do. If we run, they'll remember humanity abandoned the Arxani. If we fight and win, they'll remember that humans keep their promises, Vasquez finished. And if we fight and lose, then they'll remember that humans died trying, Park said quietly. That might be even more important. Vasquez took a deep breath. Politics, strategy, the long game. Sometimes she hated being an admiral. Sometimes she missed being a fighter pilot, where the only thing that mattered was the enemy in your sights and your wingman at your back. But she had chosen this path. She had accepted the responsibility. All right, she said. Let's finalize the battle plan. We have 2 hours to turn this system into a death trap. Move. The war room emptied as officers rushed to their tasks. Vasquez remained staring at the display. 200 ships. How did you defeat 200 ships? You don't, a voice said behind her. She turned to find Colonel Ramirez back from the surface, still in her combat armor. The Marine commander had a cut across her cheek and exhaustion in her eyes, but her voice was steady. What do you mean? Vasquez asked. You can't defeat 200 ships. Not with 12. But you don't need to defeat them. You need to break them. Humans understand this. We learned it fighting each other for thousands of years. You don't need to destroy an enemy. You need to make them lose the will to fight. Vasquez considered this. Shock and awe. Exactly. Hit them so hard, so fast, so unexpectedly that they forget they outnumber us. Make them afraid. Fear is a weapon, Admiral. Maybe our best weapon. It was true. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy was built on fear. Other species fought wars of calculation and strategy. Humans fought with a ferocity that seemed insane. They took risks that should have failed. They refused to surrender even when surrounded. They turned every battle into a nightmare for their enemies. The ambush will help, Vasquez said. But we need more. We need something that will make them hesitate, make them doubt. Ramirez smiled grimly. I have an idea. It's crazy. You'll probably hate it. Try me. 20 minutes later, Vasquez was laughing. It was crazy. It was reckless. It was pure human audacity. And it just might work. The final 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. Engineers worked themselves to exhaustion, rigging explosives and positioning weapons. Fighter pilots ran simulation after simulation, memorizing every trick they would need. The Arxani worked alongside humans, their philosophical nature giving way to practical determination. If the humans were willing to die for them, the least they could do was help. On the surface, massive screens displayed the countdown to the enemy's arrival. Arxani children watched, not understanding the stakes but knowing something important was happening. Their parents explained as best they could. The humans had come to save them, and now the humans needed their help to survive. In orbit, Battle Group Cerberus positioned itself. Not in a defensive formation, but spread throughout the system. Each ship had a role to play. Each crew knew their part. They were ready. Admiral Vasquez sat in her command chair, watching the timer count down. 30 minutes, 20, 10. Her crew was silent, waiting. She thought about Captain Chen, about the 1,000 others who had already died. She thought about Earth, 18 billion people who trusted her to represent them. She thought about the Arxani, 50 million souls who had shown humanity kindness when others showed fear. They're here, Lieutenant Park announced. The long-range sensors lit up like a Christmas tree. Over 200 hyperspace signatures, emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The Kresh Armada had arrived, massive and overwhelming. Their ships filled the display, a cloud of death coming to avenge their fallen comrades. The Kresh Admiral's transmission came through, filled with rage and contempt. Human fleet. You destroyed our vanguard. You killed our warriors. Now you will pay. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make you suffer for days. Vasquez let the transmission sit for a moment. Let them think she was afraid. Let them think she was considering surrender. Then she opened a channel, broadcasting not just to the creche but to every ship in the system, including those observers hiding at the edge, watching to see what humanity would do. This is Admiral Helena Vasquez of Battle Group Cerberus. Your vanguard came to this system and attacked civilians. They murdered innocents. They broke every law of civilized warfare. We gave them a chance to surrender. They refused. So we destroyed them. She paused, letting that sink in. You've come for revenge. You want to make us pay. Well, here we are, but I need to tell you something important. What would that be, human? The creche admiral sneered. Vasquez smiled, cold and dangerous. You picked the wrong species to threaten. You see, humanity has been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We've fought each other, fought nature, fought everything the universe threw at us. We've perfected the art of killing. And we've learned something important. The most dangerous human isn't the one who wants to win. It's the one who's already accepted they might die. She leaned forward in her chair. You came here to destroy us. You brought 200 ships to kill 12. You think you've already won. But here's the thing about humans. We don't know when to quit. We don't know when we're beaten. And we really don't like bullies. The display showed the creche fleet beginning to advance, confident in their overwhelming numbers. They moved in perfect formation, textbook military precision. They were coming to finish this quickly, efficiently, professionally. All ships, Vasquez said calmly. Execute Battle Plan Omega. Let's show them why they should have stayed home. And then the trap was sprung. The asteroids that lined the creche approach vector suddenly came alive. Explosives detonated, sending waves of debris into the enemy formation. But these weren't random explosions. The Arxani miners, with their intimate knowledge of orbital mechanics, had calculated each blast perfectly. The debris field formed a gauntlet, forcing the creche fleet to slow down and bunch together. Mining lasers hidden on dozens of asteroids began firing. They weren't military weapons, but they didn't need to be. Each laser was designed to cut through solid rock. Against shields and armor, they were devastating. The creche fleet scattered, trying to avoid the ambush. And that's when the mines went off. Hundreds of them, seeded throughout the approach vectors, each one a nasty surprise. Ships took damage. Formations broke apart. The perfect military advance became chaos. Now, Vasquez ordered. Defiant, activate. The crippled dreadnought, packed with every explosive battle group Cerberus could spare, fired its engines. Autopilot engaged. It accelerated toward the center of the creche formation. The enemy ship saw it coming, tried to destroy it, but the Defiant's armor held long enough. It plunged into the heart of the armada and detonated. The explosion was visible from the surface of Kepler Refuge. A brief second sun that lit up the sky. When it faded, 17 creche ships were gone, simply erased from existence. Another 23 were damaged, spinning helplessly or dead in space. But the trap wasn't done. Battle Group Cerberus, hidden in the asteroid field and behind Kepler Refuge's moons, emerged. Not running away but attacking. 12 ships against what was now about 160, but the humans had surprise and momentum on their side. And then something unexpected happened. New hyperspace signatures lit up the sensors. More ships arriving. Vasquez's heart sank. More creche? But then Park shouted in disbelief. Admiral, those aren't creche. It's the Galactic Council Third Fleet. They're here. They're actually here. The observers had done more than watch. They had called for help. And the Council, finally moving with uncharacteristic speed, had sent reinforcements. 50 ships of various species led by a Delcari dreadnought, whose crew humanity had saved 5 years ago. The Delcari commander's voice came through. Battle Group Cerberus, this is Commander Thelis of the Third Fleet. Sorry we're late. Your diplomats can be very persuasive when they want to be. Mind if we join your party? Vasquez wanted to cry with relief. Instead, she laughed. Commander Thelis. Good to see you. Feel free to shoot anything that's shooting at us. The creche admiral, watching his overwhelming advantage evaporate, finally understood. The humans hadn't been alone. The galaxy had been watching. And when humanity refused to abandon the innocent, when they stood and fought against impossible odds, others had chosen to stand with them. The battle that followed was still brutal. The creche fought hard, desperate now, but they were caught between Battle Group Cerberus and the Third Fleet. trapped in a system that had become a graveyard for their ambitions. Ships fell on both sides. Good soldiers died, but slowly, inevitably, the Kresh began to lose. Admiral Vasquez watched it all, coordinating the combined fleet with Thelis. Two species barely knowing each other, fighting as one. This was what the Galactic Council was supposed to be. Not debates and protocols, but beings of different worlds standing together against those who would harm the innocent. The Kresh Admiral's final transmission was bitter. "You won today, humans, but we will return. We will—" "No," Vasquez interrupted. "You won't. Because every species here will remember what you did. They'll remember you attacked peaceful civilians. They'll remember you came for genocide. And they'll remember that when you did, the galaxy stood against you." She leaned forward. "Surrender now and you live. Fight on and you die. Choose." There was a long silence. Then one by one the Kresh ships lowered their shields and powered down their weapons. The battle was over. Battle Group Cerberus had won. The silence after battle was always strange. One moment, space was filled with weapons fire and explosions and desperate communications. The next, there was only the quiet hum of systems and the soft breathing of exhausted crews. Admiral Vasquez sat in her command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the aftermath of the fight. The Kresh fleet was broken. Most of their ships were damaged or destroyed. The survivors sat powerless, their crews in custody or awaiting pickup. The combined human and council forces had won, but the cost had been severe. Battle Group Cerberus had started this mission with 13 ships. Now they had 11, with 3 more so badly damaged they would need months of repair. The Indomitable was gone, along with Captain Chen and 372 souls. The Defiant had been sacrificed, her crew evacuated, but their ship turned to atoms. Over 1,000 more humans had died in the final battle, along with hundreds of council forces. "Final casualty count," Commander Torres said quietly, reading from his datapad. 1,893 dead. 2,400 wounded. 2 capital ships destroyed. 17 fighters lost in the final engagement. He paused. The Council Third Fleet lost 4 ships and 300 personnel. Numbers. Cold statistics that represented lives ended. Families broken, futures erased. Vasquez closed her eyes, letting the weight of it settle on her shoulders. This was the burden of command. Every death was her responsibility. Every choice she made had led to this moment. "And the Arxani?" she asked. "Planetary casualties are estimated at 400,000 dead, mostly from the initial bombardment. But the rest of the population is safe. Approximately 49,600,000 souls saved." Torres looked up from his pad. "Admiral, without our intervention, the Kresh would have killed them all. Every single one. We saved an entire species from genocide." Vasquez nodded slowly. The math was brutal but simple. 2,000 human and council personnel dead to save nearly 50 million Arxani. By any calculation, it was worth it. But that didn't make it easier to think about the families who would never see their loved ones again. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Park said from communications, "the Galactic Council is requesting immediate communication. They're demanding a full explanation of our actions." "Of course they are," Vasquez said with a tired smile. "Put them through." The main display lit up with a dozen faces representing different council species. The Antari Council President was in the center, his crystalline features unreadable. The others ranged from concerned to angry. This was going to be interesting. Admiral Vasquez, the President, began, his voice formal. "You have acted in direct violation of Council protocols. You engaged in military action without authorization. You risked a diplomatic incident with the Kresh Dominion. You have caused an interstellar crisis. What do you have to say for yourself?" Vasquez stood facing the council representatives directly. She was covered in dust and dried blood from the emergency jump. Her uniform was torn. She looked like she had been through hell because she had, and she was done being polite. "With all due respect, Mr. President, your protocols are worthless if they can't save innocent lives. While you were debating proper procedures, the Kresh were murdering civilians. Children were dying. An entire peaceful species was being erased. And you wanted us to wait for authorization?" A council member, a Vrel female with blue scales, spoke up. "You cannot simply ignore established law because you disagree with it, Admiral. There are processes, proper channels. Your proper channels would have arrived 3 days late and found nothing but graves." Vasquez interrupted. She pointed at the display showing Kepler Refuge. "That planet down there? It still exists because humanity didn't wait for permission to do the right thing. Those 49 million Arxani? They're alive because we put lives ahead of protocols. The ends do not justify the means, another council member argued. What you did was reckless, dangerous, and unauthorized. You could have started a war with the Kresh Dominion. The Kresh started the war when they attacked a council protectorate, Torres said, stepping forward to stand beside his admiral. We just finished it. The council president held up a hand for silence. Nevertheless, there must be consequences. The council cannot allow individual fleets to act without— Wait. A new voice joined the conversation. It was the Arxani Elder, the leader of Kepler Refuge. His image appeared on the screen and every council member turned to listen. In galactic society, the Arxani were respected for their wisdom and their commitment to peace. Their voice carried weight. Council members, the Elder said, his translated voice calm and measured, I have listened to your debate. I understand your concerns about protocol and procedure. But I must tell you what I witnessed. When our world was dying, when our people were being slaughtered, when we screamed for help into the void, only one voice answered. Only one fleet came. The humans did not wait for permission. They did not calculate profit or political advantage. They simply came because we needed them. The Elder paused, gathering his thoughts. You speak of consequences for breaking your rules. What of the consequences of following them? If the humans had obeyed your protocols, I would be speaking to you from a mass grave. My species would be extinct. Is that the consequence you prefer? Silence fell over the council. The Elder continued, his voice growing stronger. The humans showed us something today. They showed us that some things are more important than rules, that protecting life matters more than following procedures, that courage means acting when action is needed, not when it is convenient. He looked directly at the council president. They showed us what the council should be, but often is not. The words hit hard. Several council members looked uncomfortable. The Yantari president seemed to be struggling with something. His crystalline features shifting colors in what humans had learned was a sign of deep thought. Finally, he spoke. You shame us, Elder. Your words shame us all. He turned to Vasquez. Admiral, you broke our rules. You violated our protocols. You acted without authorization. And in doing so, you reminded us why we created this council in the first place. Not to manage paperwork and debate procedures, but to protect life. To stand against those who would harm the innocent. You did what we should have done immediately. Another council member, Adelkari, who had fought alongside Battlegroup Cerberus, added, The humans call it humanity first, yeah. This aggressive compassion. This refusal to accept the unacceptable. Perhaps we all need more of it, the Antari president nodded. After much consideration and debate, the council has reached a decision. Admiral Vasquez, you are formally censured for violating operational protocols. He paused, and something that might have been a smile crossed his alien features. This censure will be noted in your record, filed appropriately, and then completely ignored by everyone with sense. Furthermore, the council has voted to implement what we are calling the Vasquez Protocol. The what? Vasquez asked, genuinely surprised. In emergency situations involving imminent civilian casualties, human military forces are now authorized to respond immediately, without waiting for council approval. Other species may request similar authorization after demonstrating they possess both the capability and the judgment to use it properly. The president's expression grew serious. You have changed how the galaxy thinks about military response, Admiral. The question is no longer whether action is authorized. It is whether action is necessary. If it is necessary, we will find authorization later. Vasquez felt something tight in her chest loosen. They understood. Finally, they understood. Thank you, Mr. President. Do not thank us, Admiral. We are simply recognizing reality. Humanity has proven itself, not just as warriors, but as protectors. Other species are taking note. We have received 17 requests from frontier worlds asking for human military advisors. 23 species want to study your tactical doctrines. The galaxy is watching humanity, Admiral Vasquez. You have made quite an impression. The communication ended, and Vasquez turned to find her crew watching her with pride. They had done it. They had saved a world, defeated an enemy fleet, and changed council policy. Not bad for a mission that had started with an unauthorized emergency jump. Admiral, Park said, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's the Secretary General. Perfect. Let's see if we're getting medals or court-martialed. The Secretary General's face appeared. She was a stern woman who had served in the diplomatic corps for 40 years. She looked at Vasquez for a long moment, then smiled. "Admiral, I just watched your report to the Council. I have one question for you." "Yes, ma'am." "When you made the decision to violate orders and jump to Kepler Refuge, did you know you were risking your career, your reputation, and possibly your freedom?" Vasquez thought about it. "Yes, ma'am. I knew." "And you did it anyway?" "Yes, ma'am. People were dying. Someone had to help." The Secretary General's smile widened. "Good answer. Earth is proud of you, Admiral. All of you. Battle Group Cerberus has shown the galaxy what humanity stands for. You've made us proud." Her expression grew more serious. "The cost was high, too high. But your actions saved millions. Remember those who fell. Honor them. And then keep doing what you do best, protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Over the following weeks, Battle Group Cerberus remained at Kepler Refuge, helping with reconstruction. Human engineers worked alongside Arxani builders. Medical teams treated the wounded. Marines helped clear rubble and restore infrastructure. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was important. This was the other side of humanity. Not just warriors, but builders and healers. The Arxani children, at first afraid of the human soldiers, slowly warmed to them. They learned that these tall beings with their heavy gravity builds and strange customs were kind beneath their fierce exteriors. The Marines played with Arxani kids, teaching them Earth games. The pilots gave rides in atmospheric fighters. The crew of every ship adopted Arxani families, helping them rebuild their lives. 6 months after the battle, a memorial was dedicated on Kepler Refuge. It was a wall of black stone, polished to mirror brightness, with names carved in both human script and Arxani symbols. Every human who had died defending their world was listed. At the top, in large letters, was a simple inscription. They came from Earth, humanity's deadliest fleet battle group. They responded instantly. They stayed forever. Admiral Vasquez stood before the memorial, reading the names. She knew each one. She had written letters to each family. She carried the weight of each loss. Captain Sarah Chen, Commander David Park, Lieutenant Maria Santos, Corporal James Wilson, Private First Class Ahmed Hassan, on and on, over 1,800 names. "They saved us," the Arxani elder said, standing beside her. "But more than that, they showed us what we could become. Since the humans came, our young people have started asking questions, not about philosophy and peace, but about courage and action. You have changed us, Admiral. Is that a good thing?" Vasquez asked. "We believe so. Peace is precious, but peace without the courage to defend it is just waiting to be conquered. The humans taught us that some things are worth fighting for." The elder placed a hand on the memorial. "Our children now learn human history in school. They study the wars you fought, the mistakes you made, the lessons you learned. They are learning to be both peaceful and strong. Like you." Vasquez didn't know what to say to that. Humanity as role models? The species that had spent 10,000 years fighting itself? But maybe that was the point. Maybe the galaxy needed to learn from humanity's mistakes, not just their victories. Battle Group Cerberus was eventually reassigned to permanent frontier patrol. Their reputation had grown beyond anything Vasquez had imagined. Pirates fled at the mention of their name. Raiders avoided any system under their protection. The Kresh Dominion, humbled and broken by their defeat, sued for peace and withdrew to their home systems. They had learned a hard lesson. Humanity's deadliest weapon wasn't their ships or their tactics. It was their refusal to abandon those in need. Other species began to follow humanity's example. The Delcari expanded their military. The Vrel updated their response protocols. Even the cautious Yantari began training rapid response forces. The galaxy was changing, becoming more proactive, more protective, all because one human admiral had refused to wait for permission to do the right thing. Years later, when Admiral Vasquez finally retired, she returned to Kepler Refuge one last time. The planet had been rebuilt, stronger than before. The cities gleamed with new construction, but more importantly, the Arxani had survived. Their culture had endured, and they had done so because humanity had stood between them and annihilation. She visited the memorial, now surrounded by gardens where Arxani children played. The names were still there, still remembered. A group of young Arxani approached her, recognizing the old human with the gray hair and the military bearing. "Are you Admiral Vasquez?" one asked in surprisingly good English. "I was once," she replied. "Now I'm just Helena." "You saved our world," the child said simply. "Our teachers tell us about the battle, About how the humans came when no one else would. About how they fought even though they might die. About how they cared about us even though we were strangers. Helena looked at the child, seeing hope and admiration in those alien eyes. We did what anyone should do. We helped someone who needed help. That's what makes you human, another child said. You always help, even when it's dangerous, even when it's hard. You always come when someone calls for help. Helena smiled, feeling tears in her old eyes. I hope that's true. I hope humanity never loses that. Because the day we stop caring about others, the day we stop risking ourselves for strangers, that's the day we stop being human. She left Kepler Refuge that evening, taking a civilian transport back to Earth. As the planet fell away behind her, she thought about everything that had happened. The lives lost, the lives saved, the changes that had rippled across the galaxy. One moment, one decision, one unauthorized jump had changed everything. And somewhere out there, a new generation of humans was serving on Battle Group Cerberus, carrying on the tradition, protecting the innocent, standing against threats, responding instantly when help was needed. They were humanity's deadliest fleet, Earth's finest defenders, but more than that, they were proof that strength and compassion could exist together, that the deadliest warriors could also be the gentlest protectors. That humanity, for all its flaws and mistakes and violent history, had something worth sharing with the galaxy, the willingness to stand up and say no further, the courage to act when action was needed, the refusal to abandon those in need no matter the cost. That was humanity's gift to the stars. And the galaxy would never be the same